This devotional is for Friday, January the 27th. The title, Elihu, an exhibition in youthful zeal. Now, our scripture reading, Job chapter 32. Now, Job 31, he recorded Job's final reply to the allegation that his troubles were those prescribed to wicked men. When Job finished his retort, his friends were silent, and we read that they ceased to answer Job in verse 1. And it says, because he was righteous in his own eyes. Well, in chapter 32, as we open our Bibles and look at that portion of Scripture, we learn there was a younger man who had listened to the dispute between Job and his three friends. His name was Elihu, and he had deferred to the elders in verse 2 and been silent. And finally, the silence of Job's friends stirred the younger Elihu to no longer hold his tongue. Exhibiting the zeal of youth, he confessed he was stirred to indignation, not only by Job, whom he observed justified himself rather than God in verse 2, but also against his friends in verse 3, because they found no answer and yet had condemned Job. Well, seeing the conversation between Job and his friends had ended with no resolution, Elihu determined he would no longer be silent, verses 4 through 8, and observed a profound and enduring truth. We read in verse 9, great men are not always wise, neither do the aged understand judgment. Now, then he demanded his elders would listen and weigh his opinion in the matter of Job and his afflictions in verse 10. Well, as we begin reading and look at verse 12, we find Elihu's words were lofty, but his spirit was negative. Though young, he boasted he had discernment in the matter of Job's afflictions that was not yet expressed in verses 12 through 17. And Elihu began to speak allegorically in terms every man could understand. We look at verses 18 through 19. His enthusiasm, coupled with likening his spirit to new wineskin that was ready to burst, resulted in him boasting and proclaiming, verses 18 through 19, I am full of matter, that is, I'm full of words. The spirit within me constraineth or compels me. Behold, my belly is as wine which hath no vent. It is ready to burst like new bottles. In other words, he couldn't be silent. He was ready to burst forth with his own observations and, sadly, condemnation of Job. Well, unable to contain himself any longer, we read in verses 20 through 22 that Elihu asserted, I will speak, that I may be refreshed, that is, be relieved. I will open my lips and answer. Let me not, I pray you, accept or favor any man's person, neither let me give flattering titles unto man. Verse 22, I know not to give flattering titles, or that is, puff up others. In so doing, my Maker, my Creator, would soon take me away and seize me by force. So Elihu's claiming, I'm not proud, but that which I'm going to say boldly. And such is the zeal of youth we find here. And notice then, though he was the youngest of the men, Elihu's youthful zeal demanded a hearing. Although he was young, he was wise in much he observed. He then began a monologue of judgment and condemnation that would last 6 of the remaining chapters in the book of Job. And yet, as we will see, when the Lord addressed the contention between Job and his friends, God will disregard everything the proud, youthful Elihu had said. Here's a closing thought for you today. Elihu's assessment was correct when he said, old age is not indicative of spiritual maturity, wisdom, or understanding. Just because you've got age on your side doesn't mean that you're any the wiser in spiritual matters. However, let us also observe how religious zeal without godly wisdom and understanding is injurious. In fact, Elihu became the enemy, the adversary of Job. And I apologize for the phone call. Let me close with this thought, and it is a challenge that all believers would be wise to heed. And that is, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. God bless you. Thank you for joining me for today's Heart of a Shepherd devotional from Job chapter 32. And again, I apologize for the phone ringing during this. God bless you, and bye-bye.